morning, everybody. You know, we talk about data, and what about if everybody from us in this room could change the world? What an amazing thought. Can you imagine this one? All of us in this room can change the world based on open source, based on data. Imagine this one. And data changes how we live, how we do. And just telling you a story, you know, what data means, and also for a person. I came in last night from Barcelona, from the total opposite event from VMworld. I was supposed to fly in at around 10 o'clock, arrived at the airport around 7 o'clock or 6:30. I looked in my email. I got an email, a message from Tripcase. They tell you where your flights are and how it is going. And the message was, your flight is delayed until midnight. And you think, sorry, holy shit, you know. You think, what's going on, you know? I'm tired, I need to do this conference, a lot of people here. You imagine a good talk, you imagine a lot of information, and being tired on stage, that's probably not working. So I went on the mobile, searched, is there a different flight which I can get earlier on? And I found a flight from KLM, would leaving at 7:40, but it was already 6:30. And then there was a message on Google when I searched for it. The message was, some storms in the Netherlands region may delay all flights and all travel, basically. And so I felt, if I change the flight, I looked up the prices was 200 euros. Is it less or a lot? But talking to you guys and delivering a good talk instead of being tired, you feel it's probably worth it. But looked it up, storms, and I said, I'm not sure if I can make it. I also was in a different terminal, you know, so what are you doing? And then it got me. I got to the final point where I could book it. And then he said, you only can book per telephone. Oh, what kind of a nightmare. I felt again, let's go. I don't do it. I stay with this one. Maybe the situation gets better, and I can get earlier on and get earlier in time. And you know what? The situation got worse. An hour later, the message on Tripcase was, your plane will leave at 1 o'clock. Taking this in amount of data, the company I flew in is a small company. If I would have had the data, probably how many planes they have and what they are capable to do, I would realize that they could not bring a different plane to improve the situation and how they work, you know. And so in my personal life, also if I would have the data, KLM is on time, I didn't have the data, I probably would have booked the KLM flight. And so data changes all our lives. And so, you know, with this one, I'm still awake. I came in at 4 o'clock into the hotel. You know, as situations get worse, we landed in 3 o'clock in the Amsterdam Schiphol Airport. And you know what? Arrived at the gate, and they couldn't get the walking stage onto the gate. And so we stayed another 30 minutes in the plane, you know. At this situation, you feel, you know what, I don't care. Anyway, changing the world with data, I think we have an opportunity here. How many of you know, we hear all the stories about Airbnb. They changed the way how hotel business is. If you look on the right side on the pictures, how many of you? They changed the way how we rent rooms. How many of you know Kickstarter? They change venture capital. You go on, you invest early in a probably product you may get, you may not get, but you put your money on risk. They change the way, basically, how they are doing it. Uber, another example, changing transportation. And there's many companies up there. The real question is, where is your company? Where is your organization sitting in here to provide this kind of change? The other question is, why can't these people provide these changes for our world in such a manner and bringing an idea to life really fast? And the reality is, a huge portion of it is open source. How many of the guys, if I would go to the VMware forum back and I would have asked them, would you believe that open source would replace a traditional Unix system? like the Sun systems, the AIX systems we knew 20 years ago. You know, what you guys doing with OpenStack, we leverage OpenStack internally. And you know what it happened to us as NetApp? Now we do software for our storage system. NetApp is a storage company. And what it did is, building our code went from 27 hours to 1 hour by using OpenStack and give the people self-service capabilities, fire up more instances. And this means a lot. Our code base, our lines of code, is the same lines of code like a Windows operating system. So think about if you're a developer compiling, testing it, and based on using OpenStack, based on using some internal technologies, we got it back to 1 hour. This changed the game, how you act in the industry. But it's not only open source software, you know, open source software in all spaces. Hadoop, another example, happens all over the place. But we also talk about open source hardware. How many of you know a Raspberry Pi? Small mini computers, Arduino boards. I call it open source hardware. A small board, a Linux computer, you connect it to the network, and you are ready to go to build an IoT device. How many of you have done it? How long did it take you? Day, 2, 3? Think about people change the game, change the world for your own life based on open source hardware, based on open source software. That's the way how this world working. Another piece which I call in this open source game from a total different perspective. Education. What are you doing if you search for information? Google, you just search for it. Anybody does it different? How have you done it 15 years ago? Searching in magazines and try to figure out something. But these days, you go up Google, you search for it. And if this is how do I have to build code, or how do I maintain my car, what do we end up very often? We find a YouTube video with a description. In my opinion, this changed the way how education is done. And then a bunch of open science and education. So everybody gets access to information. In our world, how many times you end up on Stack Overflow? If you are a coder and you have a question, I do some programming, I have some issues, you search for it, and then it's this web page where developers share information and interact with each other in a community way to help each other and change the world, change the code. These are the enabling functions underneath. And, you know, with this way, the last piece which was missing is basically how does get everybody access to compute resources at scale and at a click. And that's basically the first time, let me be honest, what AWS introduced, what Amazon introduced, what we see now with different public cloud providers. You get at a click unlimited compute resources. And everybody can access it. So turn the software, the open source, with the education, turn your idea with these tools in a few days in a prototype. How was prototyping done in the old world? Does anybody remember? For large corporations, how many large corporations do you know, or in companies you worked? People did a study on product. Should I deliver this product? Should I not do it? They end up with whatever, the McKinsey's, the PricewaterhouseCoopers. What was the answer most of the time on these product studies? Maybe. That's the usual answer you get from these guys if you work with them. And now these days, you take the 100,000 euros or whatever you spend for this one, you just turn it into a prototype, get your idea to life, and see how it's working. And all these things are working based on software and on data, on top of automated compute instances. And with this one, I think I challenge everybody. We can change the world. If we enable our companies for this new working style and get ideas in seconds, or seconds is too short, but in a few weeks into the market. Think about it. And I believe, let me be honest, I believe all you in this room are doing this at the moment. OpenStack, the open technologies, and especially OpenStack, providing compute resources, in my opinion, or all these resources, IT resources, at the click in a self-service fashion, change the game for your companies to bring ideas to life. And this is our opportunity here. And first I have to thank you guys. Work on this one, because we all can change the world and do things different. Jumping from this one a bit into technology. How many of you know virtualization? Some? I get a smile. Hey. How many of you know microservices? The small container technologies like Docker and so on. How many of you know Lambda, AWS Lambda, serverless computing? Have you heard about it? Lambda is this thing where you basically say, oversimplified, you may say, computing without a server, impossible. The idea is I don't have to take care about the server, about the compute resources. I just put code in. It's this old model. It's really an old model. Does anybody know the model? If this happens, do this. That's really what Lambda is. Just on this interrupt, do this piece of code. You put in a Java program, you put in this, and you react to an interrupt that has been defined up front. But looking into this from an architecture perspective, how many of you run VMware on a laptop? And just take a simple example. If you run VMware on your laptop and you run PowerPoint in it, you run Windows in it, you run a PowerPoint, like I have a PowerPoint here, and you store the PowerPoint, it is stored inside the VM. If you move this VM from your laptop to your laptop, and you fire up the VM, you fire up Windows, you fire up PowerPoint, and you want to open up your file, your presentation, it is still there. In the virtualization, in a VM, you can store data. Data can be inside the VM. Now comes the difference. If you turn into the microservice architectures, if you turn into the container architectures, containers cannot store data. You may store, if you would do the same thing, let's say it's not available yet, but let's do the same thing. Take container as a virtualization. I run PowerPoint inside the container. I store my presentation. I would store it. But the presentation is stored outside of the container. It looks like it's stored inside the container. If you know directory /data, you store it in /data. But to store it there, it's a reference outside of the container. So data sits outside of the container, not inside. So if you take this container and you move it from your laptop to your laptop again, you fire it up, and you want to open up the presentation, it's not there, because it's not stored inside the virtualization. That's the biggest difference in terms of architecture on microservices when it comes to storage, when it comes to data. If you want to store data, that it moves with the server, you need an integration. And that's things we are working on this integration, that the storage part says, I mount /data also on the new server when the container moves over. And then you see the data. But there's no data in a container. And this creates new architectures going forward. If you think then further about serverless computing, I talked about this if-then. It's just if-then, basically execute the code. There is no data. There is no structure for it. You need to go to a data service. It's even more advanced, and data is separated. So we end up in a model which gets us to the point where we talk about data services, and there are probably three ones. It's an object store, and with an object store in this world, data sits outside. What you do is on an object store is you put an object, a file, put this object into this HTTP address. Put it to my data service. If you fire up a container and just say, put it to my data service, wherever the container runs, this address is always available and running up there. You don't care about data management, you go up there. You have an evolution in a container space where data is separated and a real separate data layer. You may have file services like NFS or storage services, but you need integration. The model basically goes, what you see behind me, applications are only compute and a separate data layer. And if you move these applications from on-premise into the public cloud, wherever, you need a data layer that moves the data at the same time. So biggest difference is really separation of data if you go into the container space. And that's what we cover basically and what we work on. At the same time, it allows you a new model. Huge compute farm, a data layer, and you run all kind of applications. And now you can call me crazy. It could be web applications, some other applications. It even can be analytics if you look forward. Think about an IoT use case. I fire up a web service which takes the information from an Arduino board. I put it into an object store, for example. Data sits in there. And at the same time, I go up and fire Hadoop or Spark against the object store. And I have real-time analytics. And with this one, I can build all environments and I can move it into the public cloud and drive a data architecture. And that's our focus on NetApp. We build the control, and every storage we build is an endpoint to a data fabric for a separate data layer. And the data fabric means we can move data from on-premise to public cloud. You run the software in AWS, it's available. You run it in Azure, you run it in other clouds, whatever the service is. This is our focus for NetApp. Focus on this data layer and provide the integration. But think about, you see a new architecture evolving based on the core designs of container and microservices. But I talked about this picture, change the world, get ideas to life. And it's all about data, change the world with data. Data is not only the machine-generated data. Data is also how we network. We are here at the OpenStack Congress, and I would encourage you, join our sessions for the data fabric, join our sessions of Kubernetes and so on, but at the same time, I encourage you, network as much as you can, learn from others, take it into data, to bring in new ideas into your companies, to create a new IT infrastructure that your company can take ideas as fast as possible into the market, like we see it from the Ubers, like we see it for the Airbnbs. And my key message to you on this event today is network. Everybody should meet 10 person he hasn't known before and learn from their data what they tell you. And with this one, a huge thank you for having me, and I'm really enjoying the event. So thank you.
Now, glad you made it, Manfred, during your exciting trip. There was this moment when you wondered, is it really worth it? Was it worth it?
It was worth it.
Yeah, of course,
it's
you say yes, sure.
Talking to people, it's always worth it. You always learn something, you always can share something, and that's the biggest opportunity we have.
Okay, I want to talk to Manfred, who has a question maybe about this technical setup, or you can also do it in the lobby. I have one more question for you. You say companies should become more data-centric, and this is a big help, I think, if you got the configuration right. You can go from ideas to products quicker, but then also other parts of the company need to get convinced of this concept, right? I mean, it's not only the technical part.
It's different working styles.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard for people. I run a 300 people organization, and I'm 20 years with NetApp. And you can think about going from changes from traditional box selling into cloud world, totally different world. But changing mindset of people.
That's what I mean.
Is the hardest piece, but that people have fun to do it, that they work in this different way. That's the key piece on this change.
Okay. Well, good luck with changing the world then.
Thank you.